Proper sacrifice today protects you in your future. Improper sacrifice today will haunt you in your future. The U.S. military has missed on its recruitment numbers for multiple years in a row. Patriotism is at an all-time low, and even the strategic oil reserves have been depleted for political purposes. Were the United States to be drawn into a war today, we would be in the worst position culturally that we have seen maybe in our history. So how did we get here, and how can we course correct? And this is going to largely be about leadership. I want to look at some of the reporting on the state of the military right now. This is from PBS, Why Recruiting and Confidence in America's Armed Forces is so low right now. It says the all-volunteer military has reached crisis levels of low recruitment, while at the same time, the American public's perception of the armed forces is increasingly divided. A recent Gallup poll found confidence in the U.S. military is at its lowest level in over 2 decades. Only 60% of people told Gallup they had confidence in the U.S. military. This is supposed to be the premier fighting force on the entire planet. No one is supposed to be even close to the U.S., and only 60% of people believe in it. At the same time, some military branches are falling short of their yearly recruiting goals by the thousands. The Army is set to fall 15,000 recruits short this year. So we are in some real difficulty just with the morale, people not wanting to enter into the military in the first place. A lot of that, I believe, is tied to a lack of patriotism, people questioning the entire American experience. We have a very Marxist ideology that is once again propagating throughout the country. That's all about the oppressed and the oppressors. And since America is the most affluent country on earth, the freest country on earth, it is seen as the ultimate oppressor. We're colonizers. We're maybe not even worth defending in the first place. And so recruitment is low and morale is low. And I might just be picking on this, but I think that one of the key indicators of just how poorly prepared we are, and I think this is a good indicator because it speaks directly to the heart of leadership decisions that are putting us in these types of difficult positions, is where we're at with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Let's read about that. It says, Strategic Petroleum Reserve near historic lows as war breaks out in the Middle East. The Biden administration's drawdowns of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which serves as America's energy stockpile of petroleum, and high market prices delaying efforts to replenish it, have left the reserve near its lowest level since 1983. At the same time that war in the Middle East could destabilize global oil supplies. Data from the Energy Information Administration, the EIA, indicates that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve has about 351 million barrels of oil stockpiled, a slight increase from the low of 346 in July and August. The last time that it was at or below 350 million barrels for an extended period of time was the fall of 1983, when it was still in the process of being filled. In other words, it's never been this low. I mean, back in 1983, we were just in the process of starting to fill it up. Since it's past that, it's never gotten back down to there before. And herein lies the problem as I see it. The problem is that we have taken something, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is meant for something just like we're seeing right now over in the Middle East, potential destabilization that would lead to a massive crisis in the oil supply chain. And so we made a decision as a country a long time ago to stock up on this emergency for strategic use only. Now, it was used strategically, but that strategic in the petroleum reserve is not for political strategy.
Wow.
It's supposed to be used for things like war, for things like crisis, to make sure that we have some level of internal energy independence. This is a national security issue. And the reason that we drained it was primarily for political cause. Now, it was a smart strategy. Prices on everything, inflation has been out of control. It finally has been curved. But even now in 2023, we're still aware of what things were 2 and 3 years ago. And so they say, inflation's only at 4%, but we're buying a $4 carton of eggs, and we remember buying a $1 carton of eggs. And so the the inflation rate is based off year over year. So yes, it's not as high as it was last year, but for the 2 years preceding that, it had skyrocketed. So we're now at a much elevated place from where we were a couple of years ago. And gas prices, as you remember in 2022, were soaring, and they're kind of taking off again, unfortunately. And that looks really bad for midterm elections. And so we started releasing millions and millions and millions of barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to artificially lower gas prices so that the party in power didn't take the hit at the ballot box. And it's a good political strategy, but you don't use national security means for political strategy. And now we're going to pay for it. And that's always what happens. Proper sacrifice today protects you in your future. Improper sacrifice today will haunt you in your future. And so listen, if the situations that you find yourself in leadership, some of them are your fault, some of them are not. If the policies that you put into place have immediate or even long-term effect that does inflate prices, as a leader, you have to live in the reality of that situation. You have to make proper sacrifices today. And a proper sacrifice when prices are out of control might mean just going up and humbly owning what's going on and talking to the people that you lead, which if you're the president is everybody, and explaining what's going on. But you don't take the shortcut and artificially lower prices to try and boost your political means, because every benefit has a cost, and improper sacrifice has great cost, always. And the way that this tends to work is when we are willing to stand our ground and take our consequences, then we position ourselves well for the future, even if in the short term we take some lumps for it. Not sacrificing is not an option. You will sacrifice something. And if you're not willing to sacrifice today, then what you're doing is you are sacrificing yourself in the future. There's a great story in scripture that has this incredible leadership lesson inside of it. It's in Genesis chapter 41. It's a story of Joseph, who is a dream interpreter. It says, so Pharaoh said to Joseph, in my dream, I was standing on the bank of the Nile when 7 well-fed, healthy-looking cows came up from the Nile and grazed among the reeds. And after them, 7 other cows, weak, very sick and thin, came up. I've never seen such sickly ones in all the land of Egypt. Then the thin, sickly cows ate the first 7 well-fed cows. And when they had devoured them, you could not tell they had devoured them. Their appearance was as bad as it had been before. And I woke up. And in my dream, I also saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, coming up on one stalk. And after them, 7 heads of grain, withered, thin, and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up. And the thin heads of grain swallowed the 7 good ones. And I told this to the magicians, but no one can tell me what it means. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams mean the same thing. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he's about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. And the dream means the same thing. The 7 thin, sickly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 worthless are also 7 years of famine. It's just as I told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming, and after them, 7 years of famine will take place, and all the abundance in the land of Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will devastate the land. So now here's the prescription that Joseph gives him. Pharaoh, look for a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt, and let Pharaoh do this. Let him appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the harvest of the land of Egypt during the 7 years, and gather all the excess food during these good years that are coming. And under Pharaoh's authority, store the grain in the cities so they may preserve it as food, and the food will be a strategic reserve for the land during the 7 years of famine that will take place. And then the country will not be wiped out by famine. Famine is always coming in some way, shape, or form. Disaster is always coming in some way, shape, or form. If you're going to lead at any kind of a high level, you can be certain of this. You will bear immense weight on behalf of the people that you serve. And had the Pharaoh gone through the first 5 years and put together this strategic grain reserve because he knew famine is coming, but things got out of hand and maybe he lost some popularity. And so he just started handing out free grain. You know what? We've got free grain. Let me give some out. That will establish goodwill. My popularity rate, my Gallup poll will start going back up. Let me just take out of this. But you know famine's coming. And you can look at 3,000 years of war in the Middle East and know where we get our oil from. We're no longer energy independent. Where we get our oil from, there's no stability. bad things are coming. And so when you drain your strategic reserves for political means, to boost your polls, to win a few odd Senate seats or congressional seats, what you're doing is you are sacrificing your future self on the altar of immediate gratification. Here's what King Solomon said in the Proverbs. He said, look at the ant and consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, and yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. Even the ant knows how to set aside strategic reserve. We have like all-time low everything, all-time low patriotism, all-time low recruiting numbers, all-time low military morale, all-time low strategic oil reserves. And part of the reason that all of this is so low is because we have leaders who aren't willing to address reality. Here's what's actually happening. Here's where we're actually at. Here's the real state of things. We have leaders who are incentivized in every direction to never admit a fault, to never say that they were wrong, to never humble themselves, to just stick to talking points and entrenched ideologies instead of speaking to the American people about the nuance of how the world and reality in our country actually operates. To really lead people, you must be a leader that addresses reality. This is what Jesus did. He walked into the scene where everything was cloaked largely by religion and power structures, and he just started speaking truth. And everything he said was true, and everything he said addressed reality. And at the same time that we have almost no one in leadership of our country who will speak about what's really going on in front of us, we also as people have become so cynical. Our BS meters are on like level 10,000. And so we can't actually be fooled. We see it and it just grows anger, and we don't know exactly what's real, but we know that there's so much corruption, and we know that no one's actually telling us the truth. And so our morale continues to plummet, and our patriotism continues to plummet. And people don't want to sign up to potentially risk their lives for a country that is run by people who make selfish decisions and never tell the truth. If you want to be someone who is a great leader, you must be a leader that always addresses reality. I hope you enjoyed this clip from the Clayton Tyner podcast. If you want to watch the full podcast, you can check that out somewhere right around here. And if you want to subscribe, you can do that right over here somewhere. Also, you can follow me at Clayton Tyner. That's Tyner on Twitter and Instagram. I would love for you to subscribe to the channel so you can keep up with everything that we're doing.